Hi, I'm Roy Coughlan, and I'm the creator of the podcast. You can find everything about me and the 5 podcasts on bio.link/podcaster, and you'll find it in the QR code there. I'd also like to thank my sponsors. If you or someone you know is struggling with anxiety and want to know how to be 100% anxiety free in 6 weeks without therapy or drugs, Daniel Packard Anxiety Solution Program Company offers a 6 weeks system that permanently solves anxiety at an astounding 90% success rate. People who join the program only pay at the end once they have clear, measurable results. If you're interested in learning more, go to permanentanxietysolutions.com where you can book a free consultation with Daniel. Do you have high blood pressure and want to get off the meds? Doctors are amazed at what Zona Plus can do. Get a $50 discount with my code ROY. Go to zona.com/discount/ROY and you see the QR code for all my sponsors down at the end. Quality Polish manufacturer of metal products for telecommunication and workshop equipment and other metals. If you'd like a brochure, you see it in the QR code and you just let us know if you would like a quotation shipped internationally and very competitive rates. I hope you enjoy this week's podcast.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Quantum Nurse Freedom International live stream. This is Grace Asagra of Quantum Nurse, and with me are Roy Coughlan of Awakening Podcast and Carl Moore with Nature's. Well, they introduce themselves again. Nature's Podcast. And of course, we are so happy to have our dear friend Celeste Solum back. Okay, so and we're not too long ago we were just talking about all our the different things that we do to adapt and adjust to what we're doing. And see, as you notice, Celeste has a beautiful background with the books, and I like it that Carl Moore has these books and Roy has these books. So I guess obviously we don't stop reading, and that's what's most important, is not to stop reading. So the maybe we'll have a short time, depends on Celeste time for this podcast. But so put in your questions or comments the moment you can, and I'll try my best to adjust all the things that I need to adjust so that we're not shadow banned or limited views. So I'll do that. So for Celeste, you've been in this rabbit hole long time,
Yes.
almost all your life. If
Yes.
we have to count your experience with your father, and you really have been in deep dive for this, what's going on and nowadays, and what you've been saying decades ago is truly happening much more now. And I remember in our one of our podcasts with you, we talked about already the directed energy weapons, and then that they are real and it's truly disruptive. So for people who don't think who may think that we're just coming up with some crazy stories, if they search and Google the word directed energy weapons, they can see it also in the three alphabet organizations. It's there, and the government organizations, they talk about it, they've been doing about it. Different countries have their own technology. So we bring Celeste back because for me, I respect that she's been doing it long time ago and she's still standing up, continuing, and like going through all the obstacles and challenges. And Celeste also, just for those who don't know Celeste, you can get in touch with her at celestialreport.com, at shepherdsheart.life. She has a full great community for support, for daily life, for support. And but just a warning, she brings the most scary information that are truthful. Okay, but sometimes the truth is so scary, but we need to know what's true, even if it's really scary. But because at the end there will always be solutions for that, so we're not hopeless. So Celeste, thank you very much, and I'll just share to you my thoughts when I thought about the what I could invite you back is because you know the whole world knows about the Maui fires, the Greece fires, and you know all the other previous fires. And there's just so many opinions, thoughts, speculations. But so I thought of that. So I said, let me ask Celeste about that. And one time you also talked to us about the Havana effect in Cuba. So
Mhm.
if you can tie that to that as well, then of course we know what they've been doing above us, you know, in the skies, in the other cosmic atmosphere. So you please help us understand that. And um, Roy and Carl will just come in anytime they want to come in because there's something pressing that they have to share. All right. So thank you, Celeste, and please lead us the way to this conversation.
So I guess let's start with tomorrow because a lot of people are very scared about October 4th. I think that's tomorrow. Anyway, um, and they do believe that the emergency alert system, which is known as EAS or IPAWS, is going to give out a very damaging frequency to every single person. There's lots of people that are putting all of their devices, they're unplugging them, they're putting them in Faraday cages. I have written an article that's at shepherdsheart.life, and I have a video up on Rumble, Celeste Solum, one word, on October 4th. And I believe that it will be a non event. And I did work with FEMA. And so I did work with the emergency alert system. They do this every day. There's a test once a month. And I even get the printout from that once a month thing. Other than a little bit of increased rhetoric, which of course there is because there's a lot going on in our country and in the world today, I don't see that this is any different than any other time, any other of the tests. Now, this is a test of equipment, not an exercise of which there might be a live component. This is a test to make sure that if there was a hurricane, God forbid, or a tornado in your area or a tsunami, that you the government would be able to give you critical information like to shelter in place. Is it safe to go out? Do you need to have water on hand and not drink water out of your tap? These types of things. So you want that equipment functional and tested so that you're not in the middle of a disaster. And I'm just going to share one quick story of how this can go askew. So, like, I'm in the emergency operations center, and the person on the other set a line said, "I want to talk to," and I said, "Well, this is it." And they go, "No." And we went round and round in this circle. "I want this," and I said, "This is it." And they said, "No." And it turned out that two operation centers had the exact same name, but it took us about 10 minutes to figure that out. And imagine where lives are on the line. You don't want that 10-minute lag. It might mean the difference between people living or dying. So a lot of people are concerned because they know that frequency can be harmful. I agree. There is going to be an event, and it's associated with Havana syndrome and the direct energy weapons, which is the acronym is DO. That is going to be a blood sacrifice. And I would say that's coming probably 2024 into early 2025. Why do I say that? Because the military wants to eliminate all humans in the original design. Actually, not only humans, but all animals and plants with the original design, and bring in this synthetic world of just synthetic biology where everything would be synthetic or artificial. And what does that mean? It means two things. It's man made instead of the original design. Like, we've all been here, and it was like we got here because a man and a woman got together and then there was a baby. Um, and but this will be in a laboratory. And synthetic biology, if you want to put it in a nutshell, it changes your function. And they can drive that. This is called directed evolution, experimental evolution, and they can drive it any way that they want to drive it. They can put some chemicals in, they can use some frequency, they can hit old people, they can hit young people, um, whatever. As a matter of fact, if you think that this is so far out, you can go early. I believe it was this year. 60 Minutes did two 20-minute segments on Havana syndrome direct energy weapons. And that the first one was adults that were working at the White House that got hit by direct energy weapons. And the second 20-minute segment was on children that had been hit by direct energy weapons. Now, what are some of the symptoms and what can you do of a direct energy weapon? I have been hit several times. As a matter of fact, this is almost like the anniversary of when I was hit, and it was on your program, Grace. And I was talking with all of you, and about an hour and 45 minutes in, I felt heat on top of my head, but it was saucer shaped, like right up here in the shape of a saucer. And then my head started really hurting and I started feeling really rough. And I thought, well, I only have 15 minutes left. And then I went up, I made it up the stairs, I crawled into bed. And one other thing, I saw that they painted my lungs and I had covered this technology. It's called cell painting, but of course, I had never experienced it. It'll all tie in just a second. And basically, they painted COVID into me. That morning, I was fine, no sign of anything. And an hour after our broadcast ended, I had full blown COVID with 102, 103 fever, pneumonia, the whole 10 yards, vomiting, I won't get any more graphic than that. So they can't do this. Many people that get hit by direct energy weapons either can see it or they can hear it or you feel it. Like I felt that heat and that pain. The nice thing about direct energy weapons is they're very precise. It's a precise weapon system. So it's directed just at you. It's not like 5G where it's everywhere. It's just directed at you. So if you walk out of the room, but more importantly, walk outside, especially if you live in an area where there are trees and it's maybe misty like it is here today, that's very good for dampening those signals. But that signal is just going to remain static where you were, like sitting right here. Not this chair, a different chair, but I was sitting right in this spot. And if I would have not been on air, I would have walked into the other room or outside and it would have stopped. Another thing that I learned in one of the military conferences is the people that were studying Havana syndrome in Florida came up with, so they're shooting direct energy weapons at each other and seeing how they could stop it. And they said a 2-inch square on your temples will stop a direct energy weapon to your brain. It has to be a fine mesh. And I've been talking about this lately. And so Amazon lately has come up. So if it used to be, you could it would say fine mesh, but now you have to be careful with Amazon if that's where you're going to get it, because there's like this link chain. I don't know what it would be akin to. It's much too big. It would not stop a direct energy weapon. But if you get what looks like a window screen for your house, but it's made of copper. But the thing is I have yet to find somebody that knows how to ground that. So as soon as we figure out how to ground it, I mean, you can take a wire and then all the way to the ground, but then, you're walking around. Then if you think the tinfoil hat thing is weird, walk around with copper on your temples with wires sticking out down to the ground. You might get a few strange looks. I'm beginning to think that copper, an intake of like a colloidal copper in the days to come might help for a variety of reasons. I think copper is going to be the metal for these days and this season. It does a lot of things. It helps our body, it helps to protect it. So those are just a few of my initial thoughts. Anybody have any questions?
Well, I wanted to share about the copper. I've been taking copper for over a year now. And because one thing I do know about the copper, since we've been taking zinc for all those years, it is zinc. If you take too much of it, or you're not checking if you are deficient, it brings down the copper, and copper is crucial. So every day, and copper for those ladies and gentlemen who wants their hair better, it's perfect for hair. Okay, so that's what I thought. So I think I'm gonna pass on to either Carl or Roy, because I'm sure they have a lot more questions and concerns. And I'm just want to let you know that we're live in LinkedIn. I made it there, and we're live in Twitter. We're live in, so we're truly opening ourselves to the public, but not in fear, but in confidence that there is something that we can do as a collective to protect each other. And that includes from all the gadgets and technology in protecting us from the directed energy weapon to our mental thing, to some points that you do in your body. So take it away.
So I'll go first and then I'll pass to you, Carl. I just have a few little questions. So, like, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, are the main manufacturers of these weapons, or where are they being made? And then who's the shareholders of it? Vanguard, BlackRock, the usual cronies, or what's the actual whole kind of trail?
Well, it's actually a lot scarier than that. One, they do not know who the actual actors are, not even the military. They do not know. Is it, we don't know. Or they haven't said, but they really, I study people's, what they're saying, their body language, that type of thing. I really don't think they do know. But it goes from that spectrum all the way down to something called, there's an acronym, COTS, COTS, commercial off the shelf. Yeah, COTS, commercial off the shelf. And what you have to be aware of is they sell these rodent and insect repellents that are ultrasonic for your house, and they're a cot. And you can buy them on Amazon, you can buy them at Lowe's, you can buy them at whatever box store you have or whatever. Those are hackable, and they can change the frequency in it even to direct microwaves and lasers through that device into you or your house. So, I mean, I would not use it. Yes, the poisons don't work anymore. The UN saw to that. They wanted vectors. That's been all along. And even in the biotech, they talk about vectors. Well, they want mosquitoes, they want the rats, and they don't want you to be able to kill them because they want to do what they want to do. So many people were turning to ultrasound thinking that it was safe. At this point, I am not recommending any ultrasound. Even, I mean, if you have to have a small diagnostic test to see if you have a blood clot or something like that, and it's limited in scope, you're not going to be in there for a long time or have many of them, that's okay. But you have to understand that they can be hacked and weaponized at any moment, and you could be in the middle of it. And I've got an example. When I was 16, this wasn't ultrasound, but gives you an example of what I'm talking about. I went down Suicide Hill with my girlfriends, and I messed up my knee and it needed surgery. And unfortunately, they cut the nerve in my knee. And so they thought that pumping electricity into my knee would be a good thing to stimulate the nerve, trying to get it back. And so what they did is they put these electrodes on my knee and they wrapped it with like an ace bandage, and then they left. And I was I guess maybe a sophomore in high school, and I'm like, it's hurting. I mean, it's like hurting bad. Today, I would just unwrap it and take the things off. But, back then you do what the doctor said, So I left it there. And when he came back 30 minutes later, my skin where the electrodes were, there was a malfunction and it was charred. It was burnt. It looked like a burnt barbecue on my knee. So that's what I'm talking about with the directed energy weapon. Now it can be ultrasound, it can be EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, it can be pulsed EMF, it can be microwave, millimeter, or laser. It can be one or all of them, or it could be a mix and match.
And like with Maui, we saw umbrellas that were blue in some cars, and apparently the powers that be, their roofs were blue. Is that true? And I've seen where people were showing a laser and it was lasering through all different colors, but blue it didn't. Is that the actual situation, that blue is protective?
It can be programmed. So in that instance, it was programmed for the blue, but it can be programmed for other colors.
Okay.
So, don't go go to all the trouble, paint your roof blue, and then they change the color to pink, or yellow, it won't do any good.
And with what's going on with Ukraine and Russia, then, do they have direct energy weapons? And why aren't they being used?
Yeah, so pretty much I believe that this conflagration of Ukraine and Russia and that area, they use the Eastern Europe to test bed new technologies. And what they're in the process of doing is getting rid of bombs and tanks and all of that type of thing, because the new weapon of the future is frequency. So there are thousands and thousands of satellites above our head with terrible names. They're all named after gods and goddesses. They have directed energy weapons on them. They also have witchcraft, geomancer, and spellbook on them. And so that is the weapon of the future. But they need to get rid of all these other weapons, and what better way than to give just like politics is theater, that's theater. Meanwhile, they're getting rid of all the old weapons to bring on all these new weapon systems, including AI, quantum computing, direct energy weapons, and so forth. They also use it for a test bed, and they are able to, like DARPA can ship over robotics and see how do they work in a battle scenario as they work towards this future significant battle that they're anticipating in the future. So they test their new equipment over there, and that's part of the reason for that.
In the UK, London, the ULIs, where they're trying to kind of find people for going into the city and everything. You've got the Blade Runners, they're cutting down all the stuff, which is fantastic. They're telling people how to do it, and they're growing in numbers. With the 5G, when we were all told stay in home, we weren't allowed out. That was kind of essential. It's everywhere. And I understand that the power of the frequencies, because I know that they've been using it for years. And what's the dangers? Because it's not only are you seeing this on top of schools, on top of hospitals, it's everywhere. And they've replaced lights even when they were like 5 or 10 years old, something lights that would last for another 50 years. They've been replacing them, putting them, making it look like it's LED lights, but you know that they're the 5G inside it. The reality is they can turn on the frequency and pump anything into us. And it looks like with the satellites and everything, the whole world will be affected immediately.
Yeah, those lights are track and trace. They have biometrics, and they also have direct energy weapons in them. I would not be too concerned about 5G, 6G, because that is a stepping stone. They are bringing on a new power system, and it is totally based on photonics. And DARPA put its first satellite grid up, and I think its name is Power. And no longer will we even be getting our electricity through the either underground or the overhead. It is all going to be through satellite, and the only way that you will be allowed energy is if you are compliant to the system. But it is so bringing on a whole new energy source. Now, everybody's concerned about the 5G and the 6G, which they should be, but they're not even looking that they're bringing this new system. And as I mentioned in the beginning, frequency and light can be good or bad depending on what it is. And we don't know the details. We are very much in the dark, so to speak, about the details of this new system. What is it going to do to biological life? What are the health dangers? We don't know yet. But 5G and 6G will be phased out fairly quickly because they are bringing this on. They want it as a full grid by the time the smart cities are operational, which should be, I would say, at the rate that they're going, probably around January 2025.
Okay. And just finally, before I pass you to Carol, China, where's China in all this? Are they developing this as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, China's the tip of the spear. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Celeste. I'll pass you over to Carol.
Hi, Celeste. Wow, just about everything you mentioned, and I could ask questions about. But what comes back is it's really quite daunting. It's like everything that's natural or God made is being replaced.
Yes.
And Roy started mentioning things, and you mentioning robots, and then there's AI and the whole thing, the directed energy weapons. So I was going to ask particular questions about the 5G and the frequencies, but I've been trying to lately think, what are the attributes of humanity that the AI or the machine can't duplicate? And just to give you an idea, what I was thinking of is the way the AI works. It works on information. It's a reductionist system and uses massive computing power to simulate an holistic system. In other words, it can get an overall picture only by analyzing all the individual bits. But humans have this other ability to feel through the heart, to recognize intuitively, and to get a holistic, total picture of something. Now, the machine can definitely beat us on the reductionist level, like playing chess or things like that, or writing a 50,000 page essay in 10 minutes or 10 seconds. But can it? Do you know this idea of humanity being able to tap in to the source, to God, to potential? That's what I'm getting at. That's what I want to accentuate. Can you talk a bit about that and how we are pitched against the machine?
We are pitched against the machine. And I did this 8-part webinar on synthetic biology. And quite frankly, towards the end, I was getting pretty down because it's everywhere. It's in the air. It's in all of our food. It's in our water, and it's changing our DNA. And so I was getting pretty bummed about it, quite frankly. And then so this is sometimes providential. It's kind of neat how that works. So I had a person that was helping me with my PowerPoints, and she had a friend, and the friend said, "Oh, Cindy, you got to look at this prayer." And so then Cindy was amazed. And so she called me and she goes, "Y'all listen to this prayer." And this was like on a Thursday or Friday. And it was amazing. And it's a prayer for extricating this technology out of our body through our spirit and our soul. And I was so impressed. It leaves no stone unturned. And there's a bunch of prayers. Yeah, the author's name is Dan Duval, Duvall. He has bridemovement.com. And he actually, on his top menu, there'll be a thing that says prayers. You can see a sample of his prayers. But if you scroll like maybe 5 prayers, And then if you scroll to the bottom of that, it will say, and more prayers or more or something like that. And you can read all of them for free. So let's say you don't have money for a budget, although his books, I got the 3 prayer books, and they were $52. I've got to say, they're one of the best investments. It deals with reptilian bloodlines. It deals with technology. It deals with ringing in tinnitus in the ears. It is an amazing book. And when you pray it in absolute faith and belief, it really is amazing book. And so I believe that we can, through our spirit, and at least in this one, maybe there's other people out there, although I had never run across something as powerful as this to actually extricate technology that had been put in us. And like, it's like this long. It's maybe a 3/4 of a page, but it's just, you're hitting every point, like gatekeepers, gates into your body, this thing, that mesh, this, it is like, at the end, all of us, even if we don't dabble in that world, lots of this technology, most of it is evil. And you just, once you say the prayers, or, and I've said different ones, but especially that technology prayer, you just feel clean. You just feel energized. You don't, because we live in such a polluted world right now on every level, from our food to our air to our water, food. It's just amazing how we can just cleanse it off. It's kind of like taking a nice, refreshing shower with getting soap and shampooing our hair and getting clean all over. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, that as you were saying that, I was thinking, the biggest threat to humanity, we can talk of all the, the AI, the satellites, the chemtrails, but the biggest one is fear.
Yes.
The fear that comes with it. And so when you're talking about these prayer books, you're addressing that, the fear. You're getting rid of it by putting the trust of a deeper trust within, or welcoming it in. So that's it. Because sometimes, we know there's a lot of psychological warfare involved in this, if that's not the main thing. So that's another attribute of humans that we have to watch. Like people ask, what can I do? And, that's, everybody has to find that. That's part of their own destiny. But what I would say is that we have to be mindful of what we think and what we say, because what we think and how we think, that's more likely how the world will manifest. So if we're thinking of all this negative, horrific stuff, which unfortunately seems to be true, we can't ignore it. We don't want to dwell in it, because that takes us down and leaves us open. Mm-hmm. So we have to stay centered and still be able to look at this and fight it. So that's another thing, is this fear. It's on the head. It's the psychological thing. That's the way they get in, primarily, as I would see it. So, okay, so that's two things: holistic and the mind. I'm trying to separate in my own understanding what the machine can't do. And for a while, I've thought, the old days, if they wanted to build a robot, they'd start off and build the mechanics and then add stuff to it. But it's the other way around. They get the biology and then they hack it and put stuff in it. And I was always wondering why. And for me, the way I understand biology, particular humans, and you may put this in another way, that we are designed in such a way that we are extra dimensional, that mm-hmm. we're of spirit. We have so mm-hmm. much more. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, sometimes I think that technology is trying to hijack our biology to be able to get into that dimension, or to get right into the deepest aspects of humanity, or right, which is sometimes I think they're trying to break down and get into the Shekinah glory, as it were. They're trying every stealth method, using all the natural methods out there and perverting them for this. I'm starting to rant a bit here, but maybe we could continue on that as regards the fear and the psychological operation side of things. Maybe like even with Maui, because when I was watching that, sometimes it becomes so surreal. It's like, no, I don't want to believe this, and yet the facts are there. And then I back out, and I'm going back and forth, and it's and there's something deeper going on. And so, yeah, maybe you could talk about the psychological operation part of all this takeover of humanity.
There's huge psychological things in play. And actually, my last video that's on Rumble, I called it the Great American Fear and Horror Show, because people around the world, but particularly Americans, are addicted to fear. If you let it go in your body, it is like heroin. You'll crave it. And even people that you think are just normal people, they love their fear. They love to go to horror shows. They love to be scared. They love to live on the edge. And the longer that you do that, the more entrenched in your body it gets. So like when I have bad thoughts, whatever they might be, that would drag me down, I give it a very short tether. You don't want to totally ignore it, because you are a human and you want to experience everything that there is. You really can't appreciate the beautiful sunset and the beautiful trees and the birds singing unless you have a bad day. I mean, because if it was always beautiful and sunset and everything, it would just be mundane for us. But it's because we have those challenges that we can see the contrast. And as long as you keep the rope short, you're seeing it, but you're not letting it take over or consume your body. And another, I think, really encouraging thing to consider. Okay, so on December 21st, and I know that was the Mayan calendar, and everybody thought, oh, nothing happened, but it did happen. So what happened? We had been in the fifth extinction level event. We were winding it down on December 20th or 21st, 2020. We went into the sixth extinction level event. So we're at a flexure point in that right now, where the most lethal and terrible cataclysms of all history have happened. So we have that going on. We have the magnetosphere collapsing. We've got the sun throwing everything she can at us, impacting us on a daily basis. And then we have the powers that be throwing their power and control, and they want all our money and whatever else they can throw at us. But what we have to realize is that there's been 5 extinction level events before. There have been lots of tyrannical regimes, this thing, starvation, this and that. And yes, this is a little bit different. It's very unique in history, but we are all here because your ancestors survived and my ancestors survived. So we are much more resilient than we might feel. I mean, we might feel very vulnerable, but when you rise above it and say, I'm not going to let this defeat me. Like, I've been hit a lot of times in this whole journey, and it's like, I'm not going to let them take me down. And so that's where I dwell. And could something happen? Yeah. But in the meantime, I'm not going to let it rob me of my joy, my happiness in looking at the beautiful things around me, appreciating people like all of you, appreciating truth, standing for truth. I'm just not going to let it defeat me. So does that help a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, because that's kind of situation I've kind of taken. It's like I'm only going to bite off as much as I can chew of this, and I'm going to chew it well and in my own time. And I'm going to enjoy and be grateful for the time that's here. And so when there's times I sit in my garden and I listen to a stream and listen to the birds, similar to you, and it's just so beautiful. And then you think all this crazy stuff going on in the world, and you're going, what is this? Is this like a movie? Because when I find out that information, I usually get it on my computer. It's through a screen, and fiction's through a screen. Everything's through a screen. But when I go outside, I don't have this apprehension for a few minutes. I can look at the sky, and then if you see a jet go by, you wonder about chemtrails. I mean, but for that small moment, it seems totally surreal. And so it's just a matter of centering and saying, no. So in my own words, hell no. This is one's spirit is more important than anything. One's honor, and because life is a transition, or death is a transition. So it's like, I'm not doing that. No way. That's it. Yeah. And everything lightens up. Then it doesn't seem to be as much a problem, like you're saying. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's it. It's finding that. Because for a long time, I was getting overcome with all this bad information. And yet I knew I couldn't ignore it. I knew there was a lot of just people out there who are hyping things as well. And you want to be credible. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And you have to navigate this. And it's quite difficult unless you kind of wake up, I guess, and that's just realizing, this is the real world, and how are you going to be in it? And that's the choice we have to make.
And it's always been. I mean, 2,000 years ago, there was the Romans, there was Genghis Khan, and there was Stalin, and all the people, and there was oppression. And what people did is they balanced it, and they were actually much better at balancing because they didn't have the screens. They did have to get out. Most of them had to have a garden to eat food. They didn't have grocery stores. And so they did get out, and there was this balance. And I cannot emphasize how many people, I mean, thousands and thousands of people have written me, and they said, oh, you have such a heavy message, but you have such peace and joy, and you have this love in you, and even in dealing with this dark news. And so that is a way to reach people as a communicator and an influencer, because we allocate some part of our conversation to the problem, but then how can we, as people, come together either from within ourselves or reaching out to others, what we can do for others and minister to them and help them along. Like, in my spare time, I'm making phone calls, picking up the phone, connecting with people, saying, when you hurt, I hurt. And let's go back to the way that it used to be, where you had neighbors who cared about each other, and in this day and age we don't find that. People think they can be real on the screen, but on this screen you can be anybody that you want to be, and it may not even be the real you, and you have no way of knowing until you actually meet that person. I actually took a trip last year, and it was one of my community members. And I asked if I could just spend the night. I'd be coming in late in the day, and I would be leaving first thing in the morning. And she wouldn't even let me couch surf. I wanted to meet her, you know. I like to know the people in my community. And she wouldn't even, she goes, no. A person told me that a very important person's going to call me and I need to keep my space open for that person. So she wouldn't even let, I mean, it was going to be like at the most 8 hours. I mean, I couldn't even believe it. So anyway.
Um, I was thinking too, as you were saying, in the old days, people weren't subjected to, they could get a balance. And then I was thinking, well, today we have the internet. Is that the flow of information is so vast. Years ago, we didn't have enough. Now we have too much. And so things get around very quickly. So we can't, it's harder. That aspect makes it harder to balance things out, I suppose. The flow of information.
It's called in government circles and military, it's called a fire hose of information. They want to drown you in information. And actually, in the book of Daniel, it talks about that time, or a time that was going to come, which is now, where they would do that. So it would be difficult. It's almost like a tsunami. And so what you have to do is say, okay, I've done my 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever you allocate, and then you go do something else. Whether it's you clean your house or you go out and garden, or you go visit some friends, you do something other than screen time. It's the people who live on the screen that, you know, all day from morning to night, they live on their screen. It's basically they're in virtual reality and they don't even realize it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. There's so many different aspects. So tomorrow now, changing the subject slightly, with the 4th of October, will you say that was something to worry about?
No, it's a non-event. They do this every month. Why somebody's pushing it. They want us to be fearful. So what I'm looking for is, okay, they're saying be fearful, be fearful. So what are they doing over here?
Yeah.
So I'm the one looking the other way. Okay, what's going on over here that they don't want me to see? So.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
So I'm not unhooking my computer equipment. As a matter of fact, I have a interview, so I'm going to be on air. So, you know, and could I be wrong? Yeah, but I don't think I am. There's just too many eyes on it. And if something happened tomorrow, you better believe that everybody would go over to that agency and be banging on the doors and wanting to hang somebody up by their bootstraps, you know. If the dreadful things, but like last year when I took this trip around the United States, in September it was the world, in October it was the end of the world, in November it was the end of the world, in December it was the end of the world. And I took this whole trip, got home, and the world's still here. And I had a wonderful time. I met wonderful people. We had marvelous adventures, my dog and I got to meet Grace in person. And so, you know, I could have lived out. My community was furious with me. They said, you have no business when it's the end of the world driving around the United States with your little dog. I just, you know, I don't live in a place of fear, but they were just madder than wet hens at me. And I did it anyway. And I'm so thankful I did, because I have so many treasures in my heart and in my memory from that grand adventure.
That's a great story. Yeah. So Grace or Roy, do you have any questions? Because I could keep going here with. I can get onto the. How are you guys doing for time?
You go ahead if you have anything more. I could wait for the other things that someone shared with me. Okay.
Okay. No, it's just about the directed energy weapons, electromagnetic radiation, and you talked about these on the temples. What were those things to protect you? Was it grounding copper?
It's copper mesh But you
mesh.
have to make sure it looks like your screen stuff, because there's a looser weave. You don't want
Yeah.
that. You want the fine mesh.
Yeah, because it has to match the frequency, I guess, and to some degree, perhaps.
It's kind of acting like a Faraday cage in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So it has to be small enough to capture that particular frequency. So
yeah.
yeah, it's yeah. And so I've seen these people wear these kind of silver impregnated overalls or hats, and they will protect you from the radiation going into the body. But I always wonder about the edges, because if it's a high energy, you can get coronal discharge along the edges where it becomes even more concentrated.
Well,
And
you also, it's silver is not going to work for directed energy weapons. It's only copper that will work. These guys tested it out. And
do you know why? Because copper is more conductive, and silver is right next, I think. So do you know the reason why copper's?
all I know is they were in a lab and they were shooting direct energy weapons at each other, and they were trying different things to see what would stop it. And they said that the only thing was this copper mesh. That's the only thing that prevented it. And it prevents it from going in and causing damage to your ear canal and your brain, although that's their favorite place to go in, but the frequency can go in through your nose, it can go through your mouth or any orifice that you have. But their favorite is the ear, because then it does something like, it's a process called cavitation. It makes little tiny bubbles that they're at a very high velocity. Think 7-Up and shaking up that bottle of 7-Up and then opening it. That's what they're slamming into your brain, only on a frequency basis. And it then enters the brain through the spinal fluid and also the blood that surrounds the brain, slams into the brain. It can kill sections, making it necrotic, which means parts of your brain die. It can cause you to have a stroke. It can seed you for Alzheimer's or other types of things like Alzheimer's or dementia. It can also cause the bends. You can be where you are, or here I am in the middle of the United States in North Dakota, and it could cause the bends. Now, if I went to the hospital, would they understand that? They wouldn't even check me for the bends if I went into the ER. So it behooves you to learn the symptoms. I do have that series called Whack a Brain. I think it's up on Rumble. I think it's 4 or 5 parts. And I discuss all about Havana syndrome, the details of direct energy weapons, what you can do, and what the future is with this weapon system.
Yeah, and I suppose it's the strength of the energy weapon system as well, because that only protection might not protect against a direct or purposeful attack. It might just melt all that. So there's that aspect as well. But as you were saying about the grounding, I know I did a little bit of electromagnetic testing. I used to do it for people. And there was one thing where they'd have the grounding mat for the bed. Mm-hmm. And if you have this in an apartment, it'll block all the radiation coming from up underneath as well, and ground it and take it out. But if somebody has a radiation above and you're sitting on the other side of this conductor, it's going to be more directed to you. The electromagnetic smog will find a path through you and out through the mat quicker. So sometimes in shielding, it doesn't always work out the right way. You have to be kind of careful. Like even shielding your whole room of your house, you can block out frequencies, and if you bring anything in there, they'll just bounce around you know, you bring your cell phone into a sealed room, it's you and your cell phone radiation for until you absorb it, I guess, or it's absorbed by the surroundings. So usually what I would do is if I'd see radiation like a tower or something in the distance, you could block it effectively from one direction, but completely seal. You think you're doing good, but you're also blocking yourself off from electromagnetic earth frequencies, which are necessary. So the natural ones we don't want the artificial ones are too much. So what I used to tell people was, you can't avoid these things, but when you go to sleep, if you can make your sleeping quarters protective, no lights, no electronic equipment, then your body can heal or at least catch up in that period, because that's the melatonin period and the cleaning of the body at night. So it's just sometimes these things work with the grounding and the suits, and sometimes, depending on the situation, they could work adversely.
Yeah, I do have a story about that I think is really important. And I forgive all of you out there if you've already heard my story, but my husband David and I lived in a little 2-story Amish cabin in Idaho for a time. And then we moved and we bought our dream place that was off grid in Montana. And a retired military couple moved into the little cabin, and then they built a place, because that was a very small cabin, with a bomb shelter. And but they also had made it like a giant Faraday cage, the whole house. So they sealed it up, and what started happening is they started arguing. And to the degree that the wife ended up moving back over to the little Amish cabin that David and I lived in. And then he came over. He literally, because of the bouncing effect that you were mentioning, he literally lost his mind. He went over, he shot her to death and torched the house. And he's still walking around. He must have friends or connections, because he's still walking around after murdering his wife. But that's what happened as a result of living inside a Faraday cage with electronics and not giving it that path to escape, like you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And grounding is a good therapy too. Just with your bare feet walking on the grass and stuff. As long as you're not in a really highly smoggy electromagnetic environment, because then you'll act as a grounding rod. You know, so there's that aspect too.
Well, we have to be careful now, because DARPA's satellites now go under the earth and are messing with the Schumann resonance. So the Schumann resonance that gave us that peaceful feeling of walking on sand, barefoot on sand or the grass, is changing now, because they want us chaos in the sky, chaos on the face of the earth, and chaos under our feet. That's what they want. And so you might not get the same effect today that you remember 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or longer.
Yeah, that Schumann resonance, all mammals synchronize with that beat, and then they free run, and then they're synchronized with the Schumann resonance, 7.8 cycles. But I've heard some people say that the Schumann resonance is increasing in frequency, and that doesn't make sense to me, because it's defined by the height of the ionosphere.
Oh, they're manipulating all of that. The satellites up there and the very low orbiting DARPA satellites are twisting and bending our ionosphere. They're going under the earth. They are just destroying what once was.
So they're actually, so the Schumann frequency is changing because of manipulation of the ionosphere. Okay, and then that will disrupt all natural life.
Yes.
and our
But you
connection
see,
to it. Yeah.
they're terraforming everything so that there is no more natural life. It's all synthetic biology.
But it's to me, it's nature has taken millions and billions of years to come to this point. Well, time is a relative thing. If you're creationist, it's different, but it's taken a lot of work and effort to create this wonderful balance that we see here, and the subtle connections and meanings in the smallest of signals in the natural world. And so, to think that we can come in with just the arrogance to think that we can program some, like doing something to the mosquitoes because mosquitoes have no value in the ecosystem. These kind of ideas. Of course, everything has a value and a place. It's just it's crazy unless it's a formula that has worked before. And so sometimes I wonder, like even in the Bible, in the last book, it talks about the number of the beast being 666, and yet we look at our UPS codes now, and they're, the 2 marks at the beginning, the middle, at the end, they're 666, and you're going, somebody's having a laugh here. Or you find a lot of things that it's predictive, or people know about these things ahead of time. Are they just leading people along? Like they used to call this supercomputer years ago. I mean, it's probably well superseded. We used to call it the beast, and using all this kind of biblical terminology, revelations type stuff. So it's predictive, but it also sometimes feels like it's a hymn book. It's a prescription. It's a recipe.
It definitely is. This year's Burning Man theme, and the Burning Man, the money behind Burning Man are the same people that set the agenda for the next year. And this year's Burning Man that just ended in a torrential flood was Animalia. And what was that about? Bringing out the beast and manifesting it in each one of us. Not a human, a beast.
So you're saying the beast as opposed to the animal within us?
No, that was the agenda or manifesto of this year's Burning Man. Is this year's agenda is to make us not human but like beasts, animal, use our primal brainstem, no cognitive thought whatsoever. Just when they say jump, we just jump. We don't even think about it. Is it good for me? Is it dangerous? How high can I jump? We don't think about anything. They just say jump, and we jump. Like this whole October 4th, fear, and everybody's, I went on a webinar this weekend, and they were like promoting it, and I just like, I had to leave. I couldn't go there. I mean, if you guys want to buy into the fear, go ahead, but I'm not going to buy into it, so.
I'm in a lot of agreement with many things that Carl and said, and so all your comments, Celeste, and talking about that fear. Yeah, I never buy into that because it's so. I guess I wanted to remind the viewers that I know there's a lot of truth in many of the alternative media, but we have to still use our discernment when it comes whether it's so-called alternative media, because everything has just been infiltrated or used as a propaganda. So that connection to the source, to God, is crucial. And that's why, and in human resonance, all that, I also didn't buy that, and I believe that it's distorted. Everything is distorted. But you know what I have learned for myself, Celeste, Roy, and Carl, is that I want to become my source frequency generator, my own. because I can forget my shirt. One time I lost my underwear with silver. So showing shirt, I can lose some of those things. But there's the saying that where you are, where you are, there you are, right? What's that comment? So, and then they continue to, the Metatronic, will continue to just do what they think they want to do, because again, it's all a free will choice that the source gave us. Now, which free will choice is directly in line? So there's an agreement there that people didn't know. There's a free will choice in line with the source consciousness. That's what will survive, or that will continue to forever protect all of us. So I will become, and we talked about the languages. So I was thinking that we speak in many different languages, all of us. So I wanted to know your remarks, Celeste. That is it possible also that, because most of the information, maybe I'm wrong, maybe truth information is spoken in English. Is it possible that the countries that really have a difficulty also, or they need a translation, could have a mistranslation? And that could happen even in the Bible, in the Quran, and those all that. But then, so you go back again to your own self. Your own becomes real protection for no matter what. So I just wanted to ask your thought. And then a viewer wanted to ask you talked about it from the very beginning, about the venom, the snake venom in the jab or in the so-called vaccines. And then Dr. Ardis and other people are finding it's almost in everything. So those, if you can express your thoughts on that or what you know about it.
Okay, so I've been talking about that since 2019. And the original construct of COVID, actually, I warned that when we start seeing venom in it, that we know that there's some pretty nasty things afoot. And so there has been venom. They love been playing with the most lethal venoms and toxins in the world, and what they want to do is put it in products and have you buy them and sell it that it's good for you. So that way they're taking your money for venom that's going to kill you. I mean, it's diabolical, but it's in beauty stuff, it's in health stuff, it's in many different products. So that, and sometimes you pay a premium for those things, and you think that their advertisers are so good that they literally are poisoning you to death. And so we just have to watch. I'm an avid label reader, and unless that's a pretty explicit label, I don't buy the product. And I like to actually make my own products or grow my own food. That's not perfect because it's not a controlled atmosphere with a controlled water supply, but it's better than what I get at the grocery store or a fast food place. But that said, those prayers that I was talking about earlier are amazing for if, let's say, you're on the road and there's nothing. Like at one time on one of my trips, it was actually Easter. I was in Oregon. There was not anything open, and I had to go to this little hole in the wall place on the Oregon coast. I had to pay like $40 for a sandwich. $40. And not only know, I just prayed, Lord, take out the poisons and toxins from this. And please provide me with nutrition and health. And so we have to think about those things before we eat, and then be thankful and grateful that we even have food, because the day is coming when I think we're not going to have what we have today.
Yeah, I was a witness of that practice that you were doing. Well, before we share a meal, and that's really most powerful, because when you're traveling, you're not in control of your usual good food, good environment, good everything. But Celeste will be there to just lay those words, put it in the food, and put it in the company. And so that's what makes us all live the most, that what source consciousness is stepped down for us to enjoy. And I believer that what we enjoy, God enjoys that as well. And
Yeah.
that's bringing it back to the source as a gratitude, which is the most powerful thing, is gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. So anything more, Roy, that you wanted to share? Or
No, the only other thing that I had was that I had seen the energy weapons in planes where you could see the front of it rotating, and it wasn't something that I had seen before, but it was when I was doing some research I saw that. So it's basically that they have the ability of having planes directing this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so the first plane that actually had that capability was sent over. It was a Boeing jet. It's called the Valkyrie, which in Norse is chooser of the slain. America sent it over for the wildfires in Australia. And what was it doing over there? It was an autonomous jet. It did not have a human in the cockpit, and it could go invisible. It had a payload. Why are they sending that to wildfires in um, Australia? But then come to find out, it also had direct energy weapons as well, which we see now with the whole Maui thing and Paradise, California. Um, that had that capability, as well as geomancer and spellbook, where it was actually casting witchcraft spells and curses on the land and the people of Australia. And then what happened after December of 2019? That's when those wildfires were. Then we went straight into COVID, and which government was the most tyrannical? It was the Australian government. So how much effect did this canvassing or blanketing of Australia have? How did that affect the decisions of the policymakers and the politicians when they went into COVID? I don't know. Now the Valkyrie's back here doing the same thing. And now they're putting it in very low orbiting satellites, drones, that type of thing. So I guess we don't have to worry about may you live in interesting days, for we do live in interesting days. But, as Grace and I both believe, we can rise above it. We can have a good and quality life, but we have to choose and determine to have that. And we have to be, I hate to say human, because human is actually buying into that whole evolution thing, man, woman, and child. We have to be the best that we can be and share. We can't keep siloed and just interact with this screen. We have to do face to face. We have to do loving acts of kindness. We have to share what we have, more than just information, a meal or a coat if somebody has need. I'm just looking at all the homelessness that is epidemic now and all, around the world. And my heart is going out. So I'm inquiring to myself, asking the question, what can I do about, I'm as one person, so I don't know that I can do that much, but there must be something that I can do, because just my heart goes out to these folks.
Okay. Thank you.
yes, it's wonderful truly to have this conversation. And yeah, the best thing is in person. But even this, I would say that when you keep seeing people having this, you hear their voice, especially if it's truthful, that's a scalar frequency. You talk about Tesla, you all believe about Tesla. That's how you apply that. And so that you get encrypted to all of us. So when I see Celeste, it was just like as if we've known each other before, because we've been talking already. And just like last time, also I ended up having being in a space with Dr. Peter McCullough, because all people in New Jersey, those who believe in taking an active part. Okay, so it's a matter of, all of this, so what do you do about it? Because I have also connections that they know these things, but they won't go out. So we went out, then Peter McCullough was there, had a good conversation, and then there was even a surprise visit of Robert Kennedy Jr. You see? And again, you may not agree with certain people, but that's beyond humanity, is that divinity that we could all be in one place, even if we disagree, to agree or not. So we thank you so much. And Celeste, and I posted those courses for you, and I will add those links, but anything more that you want to share, please do so. And we thank you again to all our viewers. Help us, even if we're not other thousands of millions of followers, but in that one person, I know we can make a difference. Okay, so anything, few last words, Celeste?
So it's just a joy to be back and visit with all of you. And my next webinar coming up that I'm going to start digging in over the next few months is frequency and magnetism, but from a different angle. So it'll be interesting to see what I unearth, and it will be very positive. So yes, I'm going to look at what it can do, like the problems, but I'm also going to be looking at the positive things of how powerful we are as humans. And I don't know if I've shared this story. So when I first learned about nanoparticles, I learned two things about them. One, they change the spin of the atoms in our body, but they also change our magnetism. And so as I was in some of my texts, I was looking at the power of just being who you are as a healthy person, mentally, physically, emotionally, in every single way. And if you're next to a person in a grocery store and they're very sick, you don't have to talk to them. You don't have to smile at them. You don't have to hug them. Just your presence goes out and it kickstarts healing in their body. Just you being a healthy person. That's how strong you are as an individual. And now, how much better if you talk to them or shake their hand or give them a hug or whatever if they're not well. And that person can refuse it for many reasons. Maybe they like attention, like maybe they like this, maybe they like that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they will be healed, but just that's an encouragement to me to be healthy and take time for myself to be a healthy person in all ways. And that way I can reach out to others and impart health. So I guess those are my closing comments for today.
There you are, and thank you again. Follow Roy. He has this new information at bio.link/podcaster, because Roy has a number of podcasts that's very all interesting, and Carl has actually written a book, and follow him as well. And feel free to make some comments, and I'll pass it on, and we see each other's comments. And I know some of you may not like what we said, but we still thank you for listening and making that comment that you didn't like it. That means you connected with us, okay? So take care, Source Bless, and have a good time.
So I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. You'll find everything about me on bio.link/podcaster with all my podcasts, and you'll find it you see in the QR code in the graphic that's shown. I'd like again to thank my sponsors. So if you or someone you know struggling with anxiety and want to know how to be 100% anxiety free in 6 weeks without therapy or drugs, Daniel Packard's Anxiety Solution Program company offers a 6-week system that permanently solves anxiety at an astounding 90% success rate. People who join the program only pay at the end once they have clear, measurable results. If you're interested in learning more, go to permanentanxietysolutions.com, where you can book a free consultation with Daniel. Do you fight blood pressure and or want to get off the meds? Doctors are amazed at what Zona Plus can do. You can get a $50 discount with my code ROY zona.com/discount/Roy. And you'll see it in the QR code as well as Daniel's QR code. Quality manufacturer of metal products for telecommunication and workshop equipment and other metal materials. You see the brochure there in the QR code, and let me know if you would like a quotation, shipped internationally at very competitive price. I'd like to thank all my sponsors and also all my listeners. Be sure to give me a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends, really helps. And I also have a video on how to give a 5-star rating because a lot of people have wrote to me asking me that they don't know how to do that. Until next week, take care.